Zibai is almost here, and she might actually be the character that saves Geo. But she needs the correct build to shine. So, in this video, I'm going over the best artifacts and weapons you should have ready right now to make sure she hits hard the moment you pull her, so you can easily clear endgame content. Before we head into the build, I want to talk about why Zibai is a valuable pull. As we head into version Luna 4, it is important to note that Zibai lacks a specialized 5-star support. For now, Iluga is the closest thing we have to a dedicated support for her. Surprisingly, this gives Zibai a unique advantage. Because she is not tied to a specific 5-star support character, her own kit is much stronger individually. This gives you better value for your primo gems. Instead of pulling for a mandatory support, you can focus on getting Zibai's constellations or her signature weapon to maximize her damage output. Also, I do recommend getting Columbina, since as of now she lacks a dedicated support, and Columbina being able to buff her lunar damage is pretty good. She isn't a direct dedicated support to Zibai, but it's a pretty solid hydro option. So generally Zibai will be able to hold up pretty well with just Columbina, and Iluga in her team adds more additional value. Now that I have got that out of the way, let's talk about the build. Let's start right off with her artifact set. Many of you may already know that her best in slot artifact set is going to be Night of the Skies Unveiling set. This is pretty much the set all lunar DPSs use because of the value it gives. The lunar reaction damage bonus and the 30% crit rate that you get by the set is really good. This is pretty much the only set you would use. There aren't a lot of options when it comes to artifact sets for Zibai. Other than this set, you could use Husk of Opulent Dreams, but I honestly really just recommend sticking to the first set. Moving on to the artifact pieces. In pretty much every case, you want defense percent as your main stat on the sands and your goblet to maximize her potential. As for her circlet, you mainly want crit damage, but if you get a really good crit rate circlet, you can also use it. But I do recommend crit damage circlet more, especially if you use Harbinger of Dawn as your weapon, which I will discuss more later in the video. Moving on, what is the priority of the stats you exactly want on Zibai? So if you didn't know by now, Zibai is mainly a defense scaling DPS character. So her priority for stats is pretty straightforward. You should prioritize crit damage along with crit rate. They are pretty equal when it comes to priority, but I do recommend getting crit rate first before you heavily start investing in crit damage. After that, you want to prioritize defense percent. Since she is a defense scaling character, you want to have pretty decent defense build on her, so prioritize it along with crit damage. And lastly, some additional elemental mastery and energy recharge rolls will help you out. The last two rolls aren't important, but they are good if you can get them. I do recommend getting a few more elemental mastery rolls than energy recharge if you are going to use instructor set on someone in your Zibai team. Now, let's talk about stats requirement. This will give everyone a brief idea about how much stats you should have on Zibai. For her defense, anywhere around 2,500 to 3,000 defense should work. If you are lucky enough with your artifacts going higher, is also alright. And along with defense, you also want to get a lot of crit damage on her for a good build. As for your crit rate requirement, it will vary with the weapon you use, so make sure to check your weapon substat. Since most people will use Harbinger of Dawn if they have a shielder, that lowers the crit rate requirement a lot. You get 28% from our 5 Harbinger, 5% from Iluga passive, and 30% from the artifact set. That's 63 crit rate already, and you also get additional 5 crit rate from Zibai's base crit. That's a solid 68% crit rate that you get without any artifacts. So you would only need 32% more from your artifacts to max it out, which is pretty good. As for EM and energy recharge, you do want a little EM, but it's fine if you don't have a lot of rolls on it. And energy recharge doesn't have to be really that good either. Around 130 to 140% energy recharge is very comfortable, so you can use your burst during your other characters' burst downtime. Moving on to talent priority. I won't waste much time on this. You mainly just want to upgrade her elemental skill first, because that is the core part of Zibai's kit damage. After that, prioritize upgrading her burst, since you will also be using it quite often during your rotations to reduce the cooldown of other team characters' burst. For example, Goro has a pretty long cooldown on his burst, so using Zibai's burst can help you with the downtime. Lastly, you want to upgrade the normal attacks. Now, let's move on to her weapon options. First, let's talk about her signature weapon. Her signature will of course be the best in slot and really good for Zibai. I do want to mention that there are quite good free-to-play weapon options, so it's not entirely game-changing and must-pull weapon. But it's pretty good if you want to go for it. Moving on to other characters' signature weapon, Chiori's signature weapon, Oaraka Misagiri. It is pretty decent if you have it, and will definitely be her second best in slot since it provides really good defense for her. Another good signature that you can use is Alhaitham's signature, which is light of foliar incision. This weapon is also pretty decent option for Zibai. I do recommend investing a little more in elemental mastery if you are planning to use it. Lastly, another good signature is Peak Patrol's song, which you can use. It's definitely nowhere near other signatures that I mentioned, but it's still pretty decent on Zibai. Moving on to free-to-play options, I mostly just recommend two good weapons. First, our 5 Harbinger of Dawn will actually be the best free-to-play weapon if you have a shield character in your team. Without a shield, your passive uptime won't be for long, so I definitely recommend having a shielder in the team if you are planning to use Harbinger of Dawn. Mainly, I will just recommend Zhongli or Nefa as the shielder since they fit pretty well into Zibai teams. But if you don't have a character that pairs good and has a shield, then you can go for our 5 Flute of Ispitzel. It's the Natlon craftable weapon and will be a really good option if you don't have a shielder. For a more lower investment option, you could use Cinnabar Spindle, but most people will stick to Natlon craftable and Harbinger of Dawn. Now, I want to talk a little about early vertical investment and constellation value. I won't go fully into her constellations, but I will discuss the early constellations briefly, so you can plan your pulls accordingly. Her R1, which is her signature weapon, is slightly better than her C1 if you want to maximize the damage. But I do want to add that the banner lineup along with Goro and Aluga constellations is pretty valuable. So even though R1 will be better than her C1, it's better to still pull on her banner if you don't have C6 Goro already or want more Aluga constellations. As for her C2, it's pretty big and almost 43% better than her C0. So if you can guarantee yourself C2, I do recommend to keep pulling on the banner instead of the weapon. But if you can only get C1, it's still better to pull on the banner if you don't have Goro constellations and did not get a lot of Aluga constellations before Zibai C1. Moving on to the very last section, which is Zibai's team comps. I do recommend having Columbina, but even without her you can still form a few teams. The reason I recommend Columbina is because Zibai does not have a dedicated support for her as of now, so Columbina slightly fills up that role by enhancing her lunar damage and acting as a sub-DPS if you put her on the new artifact set. This way, Zibai doesn't have to rely completely on her own damage in the team. Now, let's discuss the team options. I will first discuss team options along with Columbina and Aluga both. First, let's talk Zibai Premium Team. If you just want to maximize her damage, this is a pretty solid team. The team consists of Zibai, Aluga, Columbina, and Goro. The problem with this team is that there's really low sustain, which is C for Goro and Columbina, if you use Prototype Amber on her. But it still holds up pretty well since Zibai is defense scaling, so she is naturally tanky, and the minimal healing should be enough to keep her alive. Though with this team you cannot use Harbinger of Dawn as your weapon since you won't be able to guarantee the weapon passive, and will have to use the Natlon Craftable or any other weapon that you may have. You mainly want Columbina on Morningstar set followed by Aluga on Silken Moon and Goro on Instructor for that additional elemental mastery bonus for Zibai. Next, another solid option instead of Goro is Zhongli. This adds much more comfort to the team with a small DPS loss compared to the Goro team. This is the best team you could use for Zibai if you are using Harbinger of Dawn on her. You want Zhongli to maximize his shield potential, so you can go for any two-piece HP artifact set on Zhongli, and rest of the character's artifacts remain the same. If we get future Liyue buffs, this team might even surpass Goro Premium Team. You could also use Inefa instead of Zhongli, but Electro will slightly interfere with your reactions at the start of your rotations, so do keep that in mind. She won't benefit Zibai directly, but the shield is pretty good, and Inefa's own damage makes up for the interference of Electro in the rotations. Regardless, this is also a good team option too, and you could use it if you have Inefa in your account and don't plan to pull for Flynn's. You mainly want Inefa on Morningstar over here to enhance her personal damage. For other characters, the artifacts remain the same, but if you want to min-max Zibai's personal damage, you could go ahead and change Columbina's set to Silken Moon instead of Morningstar, and change Aluga to 2-piece 2PCM for more buffs. Also, technically, if you look at the raw DPS numbers, Chiori as the 4th slot is the best, even better than Goro, but remember there's not a lot of sustain in here, so it's pretty hard to use. Regardless, if you do plan to use it, Chiori should be on Golden Troop. The team DPS is not higher by a lot than C6 Goro, so it's not really worth it unless you really want to use Chiori. Another good option is Albedo if you have him. You want him on Husk of Opulent Dreams artifact set, so he can contribute to the team damage. Lastly, one more option which is decent is Shilinen as the 4th slot. I want to add a little more to this, since as we all know Shilinen cannot shred Geo resistance in a triple Geo teams unless she is C2, so having C2 Shilinen will make her miles better than C0. But if you only have C0, you could still use her for a decent sustain option and put her on Scroll artifact set to contribute in the team. These were all the Zibai teams that included Columbina with her. If you don't have Columbina, the best option would be C6 Aino or C6 Xingqiu. The artifacts will change according to the team you're using, so I won't go into full details since most people already have Columbina. If you do have any questions about non-Columbina teams or any other questions about Zibai, let me know down below in comments, and I will try my best to help everyone out. As always, thank you so much for watching. If this guide helped you, consider dropping a like and subscribing. Good luck with your Zibai build, and I'll see you all in the next one.